Hi, I'm Dr. Beverly Yates, ND. Let's talk about how to reverse type 2 diabetes for good naturally. I'm about to show you exactly how this can work, whether you're on prescription medications or not. If your desire is to reduce your dependence on medication or it's independent of that, you're still in the right place. So we'll use these 5 easy steps to discover how to reverse type 2 diabetes for good naturally. Now, each step is something that you can take control of and take charge of for better blood sugar numbers and improved blood sugar control, whether you are awake or asleep. You can take these steps once you understand these things as next steps, which are parts of your lifestyle that have the most impact on your blood sugar over time. That clarity will make a real difference in your choices and understanding what's connected. These are often the pieces of explanation or understanding that are not explained to people, which I really feel is unfair. So let's untangle it. Now, at first, some of these things can feel a little bit overwhelming, and that's okay. That's a normal reaction. Ideally, you'll come away feeling informed, encouraged, and empowered, inspired to take charge of improving your health. Remember, it usually takes time to develop type 2 diabetes, and it might take some time to naturally improve your situation and reverse type 2 diabetes where possible for good. The steps we cover include nutrition and meal timing, sleep, stress, exercise, and strength training. These are the key factors in how to reverse type 2 diabetes for good, naturally. Now, many people prefer, if they possibly can, to reduce their dependence on prescription medication. And approaches that focus on lifestyle steps are common sense ways to naturally reverse type 2 diabetes for good. This inspires people once they have the info that they need in order to take these steps to make these healthy choices to minimize or eliminate interfering factors. But first, you have to know what is an interfering factor, right? And what does for good mean in this context? Once a person's A1C blood sugar reading reaches 5.6 and lower, and it stays there for years, that demonstrates that they have reversed type 2 diabetes. I thought it would be good to point that out. All right, so let's dig in. Sleep, stress, nutrition, meal timing, exercise, and strength training. These are the keys to reversing type 2 diabetes for good naturally. Let's take a look at each one. Let's start with sleep. That's probably the least talked about aspect when it comes to good blood sugar control. If you have good, healthy sleep habits, you go to bed at the same time each night, you awaken at the same time each day, even on weekends, even during a holiday. That's great. Good for you. Keep it going because that's a plus. That's a helpful thing in terms of good blood sugar control. If your sleep habits are very erratic, you don't go to bed at the same time, maybe your sleep urges aren't the same each time, you don't feel like you're sleepy. Maybe you have a job that requires you to get up a lot earlier than actually feels natural and comfortable for you. Or maybe you have a job that forces you to stay up a lot later than you naturally would want to, right? These are all factors that can impact your health, including your blood sugar. They're going to impact your moods, your mental health, perhaps your weight. All of these things are tied together. Now, here's the thing. When we go to sleep each night, it is a beautiful opportunity for the body to reset our blood sugar. When we go to sleep, because we're fasting, we're not eating anything, we're not drinking anything, your blood sugar should return and stay at a healthy blood sugar number. What is that? That range would be 75 to 99. Ideally in the 80s, that way it's not too low, but then it's not going to be any higher either than 99 when you awaken. Hitting that reset button every night for your blood sugar is a beautiful thing. It keeps you out of trouble with any of the consequences of chronically high blood sugar, including when we're asleep. If your blood sugar number, when you first wake up in the morning, your morning blood sugar number or your fasting blood sugar number, another way it's referred to, is 100 or higher, that is considered too high. 125 or higher is often diagnosed as being type 2, along with an A1C of 6.5 or higher. So just know those are two numbers we care about, the fasting morning blood sugar number and the A1C number. Okay, so with sleep being that beautiful opportunity to hit the reset button, it's also a time when your body restores, repairs, regenerates. Everything is in repair and restore and regeneration mode. Your brain does its own cleansing and restoration, so essential. Those first parts of your sleep cycle are critical for brain health, avoiding dementia, avoiding Alzheimer's disease. Your gut does its repair when you're asleep because you're fasting. You're not eating or drinking anything. There's no extra demands on the gut. That's why it can heal so well during that time period. That's also why it's a bad idea to eat a heavy meal right before you go to sleep. These things are all related, right? Make a good choice one place, it rewards you in another. Make a poor choice in one place, unfortunately, it might punish you in another place, all right? Other things to know about sleep. or that part of that restoration also happens for our musculoskeletal system. It happens all over the body. And it gives us a time to do the repair and the background, if you will, spring cleaning on a nightly basis. Okay? So much goodness comes with sleep. It lets our soul reset, our mind reset, our emotional self reset. And we can deal with and wash away the day's aggravations and wake up with a fresh start the next day. Okay? So now let's look at stress. Stress is another factor, and chronic high levels of stress are no one's friend. Whatever is your weak links, whatever your vulnerabilities are, that's typically what's going to be expressed if we are overly stressed. For some of us, it might be gut symptoms. Maybe we are prone to things like irritable bowel syndrome or Crohn's disease. Maybe some of us will have issues with cardiovascular problems and heart disease. Maybe some of us will have things like uterine fibroids if we're women, prostate cancer if we're men. Chronic severe stress can break any number of things. And some of us genetically, as well as genomically, are more vulnerable than others to certain things. This is why you can see that some people within a family might have something like osteoporosis, or they may have osteoarthritis, or maybe they all are struggling with autoimmune illnesses, right? It could be Hashimoto's thyroiditis, it could be rheumatoid arthritis, maybe it's diabetes. Maybe your family has issues with blood sugar control and glycemic regulation. Many things can show up, and stress will magnify, make these things worse if it's chronic, severe levels of stress. Because stress releases cortisol. Cortisol is a hormone, causes the release of glucose, blood sugar is another name for that. And together, these can be a problem if it's a chronic, severe situation. And after a while, we become more and more insulin resistant because insulin gets overwhelmed with the amount of glucose that's in the bloodstream that's trying to grab up out of your bloodstream and put inside the cell to make it available for energy. So this excess blood sugar in your bloodstream, because insulin can't properly function on a cell wall and bring it inside the cell to make it available for energy. Instead, it stores it in the liver as fat and in other places in the body as fat, primarily around the belly, around the abdominal area, as visceral fat, which puts off all of these chemicals of inflammation, these inflammatory cytokines that damage many parts of the body and can lead to some of the more serious consequences of type 2 diabetes when things aren't well regulated. Whether that's going to be heart attacks and strokes, maybe it will lead to the need for dialysis because the kidneys just shut down and aren't able to function. Maybe it's neuropathy where the nervous system becomes compromised. People go from shooting, stabbing pains to just completely numb and then being injured because they cannot feel themselves. Compromised immune function. So then they're far more vulnerable to constant infections with like colds and flus and things like that. Could be poor wound healing. Wounds simply will not fully recover and heal like they would under normal circumstances, etc., from the complications of chronically high blood sugar numbers. Another thing to think about with stress and or sleep issues is that it makes us more vulnerable to cravings. Unfortunately, the cravings will be for typically high calorie sweet food or high calorie savory or umami food like biscuits and gravy. Not fair, but that is how that works. And so if we can untangle the sleep or the stress issues, we often will get relief and not have so many problems with cravings. Okay, so just know it's hopeful, but you're going to have to tackle one, if not both of those topics. All right. Another consideration is simply nutrition. I think we all know that blood sugar is very sensitive to what we eat. And some foods produce a hormonal response. What do I mean by that? The foods produce a response that causes a rise in insulin. Some foods, like say celery or broccoli, are not causing a big rise in insulin typically. But other things like simple grains, like say polished white rice, maybe white potatoes, wheat, things like that could cause a big spike in your blood sugar. It's a great idea to test and not guess. So either you get a drop of blood, put it on a test strip, put in a glucometer to see what your blood sugar is doing, or you can use a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, so you know what's what. That way you can tell how your blood sugar is responding to what you're eating, what you're drinking. Some things will be just fine for you, and other things you might be surprised. It can even be foods or beverages that are generally considered healthy. Maybe you specifically aren't having a healthy response. It's good to know, right? Okay, another thing to consider with this is meal timing. Now, meal timing is an interesting topic. And in that, I just simply want to say that intermittent fasting, fasting in general, it could be a water fast, it could be a fasting mimicking diet, it could be all these varieties of intermittent fasting options that we have However you do it, whenever you do it, fasting is a great way to heal. Human cultures have been doing fasting for cultural reasons, for spiritual reasons, for religious reasons, for centuries and centuries and centuries, truly thousands of years. It's safe, it's reasonable, and I would say it's probably the simplest path. And so I would encourage you, if you're struggling at all, to absolutely find a fasting plan and stick to it. Find something that you think can work for you and experiment with what your options are. And if you're doing fasting, they will tell you within the constraints of that program what the meal timing is that makes sense. If you aren't fasting, what I found is if you're having 3 meals a day, let's say it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, whatever you do, don't skip lunch because that's usually where things break for most people who struggle with blood sugar issues. And I've noticed that many of the people I've worked with over the years who have type 2 diabetes often have a pattern or history of skipping lunch, often by accident, because they tend to be the go-to person in their world. They're the one to get stuff done, no matter what else is going on, and their own self-care often goes right out the window. So I would encourage you, if that is something that sounds familiar, to please make sure you have a plan for your meals, all of your meals. This would include lunch, okay? This way it keeps you out of trouble, keeps you from running for fast food because you're just eager to get something to eat, etc. And it helps you to avoid being overly hungry at dinner time. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Would you please let us know in the comments below what comes up for you as I talk about these things? Do you have further questions or does some of this sound familiar? We'd love to hear from you. If you could hit the like button and subscribe to this channel, this helps us grow and spread the word to others. All right, let's talk about some other options. Exercise and strength training will be the final big thing we're going to talk about. Regular, consistent exercise is one way to establish a good circadian rhythm. That way your body gets to know what to expect when. So if you can exercise at the same time of day, that's really a help. If you can't, don't worry about it. Exercising whenever is way better than not exercising at all. In general, for best benefit, you're going to want to exercise with at least 3 to 5 hours before you go to bed because exercise naturally produces a rise in cortisol, the stress hormone, and that's okay. With it will be a release of blood sugar because you're actively using your muscles. You're working out, right? That's all right. So if you're using a continuous glucose monitor or if you're getting a stick of blood, a drop of blood rather, putting it on a test strip and then putting that inside a glucometer, you'll find that your blood sugar numbers go up when you're actively exercising. That's normal. Nothing to freak out about. It's a normal physiologic response. Once you stop exercising, your blood sugar should return to what was hopefully a healthy level or whatever the level was before you started exercising within 30 minutes to 60 minutes. Okay, so if you do it right before bedtime, this is generally going to be a mistake. So I would say if you're going to exercise, please do make it a habit, let's say 5 days out of 7. And for best blood sugar benefit, avoid doing it right before you go to sleep. And also to make sure you can actually get to sleep and have a quality sleep. You know, that's another interfering factor. Sometimes people will exercise right before they go to bed, and then they'll say, oh, I tossed and turned all night. I didn't have really good sleep. I don't feel so great the next day. Yeah, it was too close to bedtime. Okay. So that's one thing to know. Another thing to know when it comes to strength training is that strength training is your friend all day, every day when it comes to blood sugar. Why is that? Because those active working muscles are blood sugar sponges. They're going to cause that rise in blood sugar. And then after you're done exercising, it's going to bring it down to a healthy level or closer to a healthy level. It really is a friend. You can watch this phenomenon for yourself and go, huh, that's what's going on, right? So you're going to need to give it 30 to 60 minutes after you exercise to see your blood sugar come back down, particularly if you're doing strength training. I always encourage people to do strength training, and I'm surprised that more doctors don't talk about strength training as a powerful tool for dealing with blood sugar issues and helping people who have type 2 diabetes to be able to reverse it naturally and reduce their dependence on prescription medicine wherever possible. It is a straightforward thing. You can do it at the gym, you can do it at home, you can use your body weight as your strength training tools if you are traveling, if you're away from home, etc. I mean, there's just so many ways you can work with this. And in today's world, some of us, we are just sitting, and more sitting. It's too much sitting. This is part of the problem, the tangle we get into, right? Where our blood sugar just gets compromised and our ability to be well and to be healthy are influenced. So these are the factors. Now, rather than make this feel like or sound like you got to do everything all the time, listen, here's what's real. From my clinical experience, I find that any 2 or 3 of these topics are what people need to focus on. Get good habits in 2 or 3 of these areas, and the rest will come along. And the good news about this is, as you develop healthy habits and that becomes your go-to, if you get disrupted for any reason, life be lifing, as one friend says, right? Life just throws you a curveball and gets in the way. Or you are disrupted because you became ill, or you were in an accident, or you're recovering from surgery. Please be kind to yourself, be patient. You'll be able to get back on track because you're going to remember, oh, right, I felt so much better when I was doing those kinds of self-care things. And it's going to pull you forward rather than make you necessarily feel bad because you're unable to do it in that moment. Please give yourself that grace. All right. So what are your thoughts? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Please give this video a like and hit the subscribe button so this channel can grow and we can reach even more people. All right. I'm going to leave you with this thought. Please be kind to yourself. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.